In today's episode, we are focusing on the real estate side of separation. When it makes sense to stay versus sell, do you buy or rent your next home, how to set up two homes that work for your family, and how to support the kids along the way. Whether you're navigating a split yourself or supporting someone who is, this episode is all about making smart, practical housing decisions during a major life transition. Welcome to Who's in My House? Today, we have Claire Speedie, a realtor with Chestnut Park. Thank you for coming.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the industry?
Well, I've been in the industry way too long at this point. I'm at 20 years.
Wow.
And I have been mostly an agent in the central core, predominantly referral based. And I've had a small team for a time. Then I've worked with a team. I worked with Heaps Estrin for 5 years. And I'm now at Chestnut Park, and I've been there for about 4 years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You also kind of have a little bit of a niche.
I do. It's funny. I've kind of evolved into it, but about 90% of my business is what I refer to as families in transition.
Okay.
So it's professional families who are separating and divorcing and often blending families. But yeah, it seems to be a lot of the work that I do as of late. Yeah.
Obviously, when we come to a time where there's a separation, there is a pretty big decision.
Yep.
Do you stay in the house? Do you sell it?
Yep.
You know, walk us through when it makes sense to stay in the home versus sell.
Well, I mean, it comes down to the finances, first of all. You know, I think the most important piece is that whoever chooses to stay can really finance living in the house and living comfortably without a lot of stress. Because I've certainly seen many scenarios where one party has tried to stay, but the level of stress within the household is just so high, and that emanates throughout the home on a daily basis. Like the kids feel it, the person staying there feels it, because they're just trying so desperately to keep the home.
Yeah. And that's also assuming that they have the funds to buy the other party out, right? Because that can be a pretty significant expense.
And when they do that, often there's no other funds for anything else. Like the vacations are gone, schooling options are gone, you know, just the normal day-to-day activities that the children had. Yeah. Everything's sort of minimized.
So in an effort, I guess, to stay in the home, they're sacrificing a lot of the lifestyle that they've had before.
Yeah. I mean, I think what happens also with mothers in particular is there's this feeling or this sense of, you know, I have to keep the home. Come hell or high water, I want to keep the home for my kids, you know, but what I see sometimes is they certainly try and it can work. And if it can work, amazing, you know, because it's certainly very grounding for the children. But often I get a call, you know, a year later from the overwhelmed mom who's just like, she's just tried so hard and she's really sort of diminished herself throughout the process because she's not looking after herself. Like she's trying to literally do everything to keep the house. Yeah.
When you're going through such a big life change and transition, making a quick impulsive decision before you've really had time to sit with it and navigate it is, I mean, even with buyers when they're moving into a home and they've got, you know, we've bought and we're going to our buyer visits and they're looking at all these things that they want to change and they're like, I want to take this wall down and I want to do this, and I'm like, move into the house. See how you feel with it, because you might move in and realize that wall is really handy, or you really like you don't want to put in all this work that you'll regret later. And so very similar to that, give yourself some time, figure out what is going to be best for you and your family, and then you can kind of take the next step. Yeah,
I agree. Like I think, you know, trying to just give yourself that first year so that you can make an informed decision really makes sense. Sometimes that it can make sense to rent for the first year. I wouldn't say renting for particularly long makes sense. I see that as a mistake, certainly amongst some people that are getting divorced. They just rent for way too long and lose a ton of money.
Right. So sinking the cash that they had into the rental, and then that kind of screws them in the long term for being able to purchase again.
Yeah. And I must admit that, I'm sad to say this, but it often happens with the women more than the men. And as a professional woman, I do find it a bit sad sometimes because I think the women, and these are I'm referring to educated professional women. I think they find it tough to accept that the home that they had is not going to be the home that they're going to be able to purchase. And as a result, they end up renting. But then 1 year turns into 3 years, which turns into 4 years. And that down payment that they had towards the house has now been eliminated. And unless they have a job where they are really making a substantial increase in salary, the increase in salary cannot keep up with the appreciation of the market.
Yeah.
Even now, even if you're just appreciating by 2-3%,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So the house that they could have afforded, initially, or after 1 year of renting, they can't afford after 4 years. So they come back to me, and it's much, much worse. Whereas the men, I hate to say it, but they will often buy something that they would consider sort of a downgrade, but they get into the market a lot faster, often right away. They'll get the condo or the townhouse or something, an in-between property. And guess what happens? Most of the time it appreciates. So I get the call, year 4. Well, they've made money on the market, and now they're going back into a similar product that they had before.
That they had initially. So I can see how when you get into the rental and you kind of make yourself comfortable, you start transitioning and really figuring out what life looks like now with the separation or the divorce, it can be really hard to pick up and move again.
Yeah, that's right. But what happens is, from a financial perspective, the women are in a much more difficult situation over time.
So what are your thoughts on, I don't even know what the proper term would be for this, but when families have kind of keep the house as the family home and the parents are the ones that alternate. So a couple years ago, I was helping a colleague out with a rental listing that she had, and the tenants were a divorced couple who this was going to be their spot for when they weren't in the family home. So essentially it would be 1 week on, 1 week off with each parent. Kids are always in their home base. They have the same room. They have the same space, whereas the parents are the ones that alternate. How have you found that to work? Have you dealt with this at all?
Yeah, so it's called nesting.
Okay.
And I did it myself for the first year and a half. The girl's dad and I would just go back and forth. And it's often done for the first year or two as the children are getting used to this change. And as the parents are, going through the legal process and, essentially getting all the legal documents done. So I think it can be really great. It's a great way to ease everyone into it. Long term, it's difficult, right? Because people move on, the parents move on, perhaps they connect with someone else, establish a blended family, or just even want to live in a different location. Also, financially, it means that the funds are tied up in that primary asset, right? Which tends to be a lot more expensive. So they can't, if the funds are all there, they can't necessarily set themselves up like some people can, but most can't go and buy a condo to live in or whatever, right? So I think it can be really effective, but it just, most people move on.
So I know that was one thing we wanted to talk about. How can, parents create a comfortable space for their kids so that they don't feel kind of dread going to the other parent's home?
Well, just in terms of the logistics, it doesn't always work, but ideally, if you can have 2 of almost everything, like the hairspray, the nail polish, like every single thing, literally have both in each space, the jeans, all of it. Like that would be one thing that I would certainly suggest. And then also having like decorative items that are representative of the other parent, like photos of the other parent, like if there's a special, like with younger ones, like blanket from mom's place, or anything that's a source of comfort to them, that's a reflection of the other parent, I think should just be a part of that, home, both homes, like going back and forth, What else is there? In terms of getting children comfortable with new spaces, I always would try to, do things like, okay, let's make a plan around painting the room. Like, how are we going to paint the room? Like, what are we going to, what ways are we going to decorate it and make it inclusive?
Yeah, have some more autonomy over their own space. So it feels like theirs and not dad's versus mom's.
Yeah. We want to try to make choices so that they really feel good and confident about the home that they're living in. So if it's a condo, like we choose one super close to the school so that their house is closer to the school than mom's house. So that if anyone wants to come home for lunch, they're coming home to dad's house. We'll get, the amazing party room and movie room, a theater room so that, kids can have like a birthday party there, the driving range, like that's super fun. And the other big one is the pool, right? So like, let's choose things that make children really excited about the new space and want to come to dad's.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us into the conversation about choosing the second home and what some of the priorities should be.
Yeah.
What are you, do you think proximity to the other parent would supersede larger or more comfortable space?
100%. Okay. I think proximity is really important. And also, in most legal documents, there is, people negotiate and, that there can be a maximum distance from each other's houses.
Interesting.
But it's just easy, if you can go back and forth, because the children are under strain when they, you forget the homework or you forget this and that. And if it's a 20-minute drive back to mom and dad's house all the time,
I hear you.
I think it can be tough. Even psychologically, I think it's nice for children to feel like, oh, well, like if I want to run over to mom's, like it's not too far. So I think it's really important to try to keep them close if you can.
We've talked a bit about finding the new home, how to make it feel like home for the kids and for the parents. Let's talk a little bit about how kids actually process the move.
It takes time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on how they've been communicated with through the process and if they have been engaged and if they're a part of it or not. But it's certainly, it's an adjustment, right?
Yeah.
For them. And I think you have to give a child probably a year to really settle in. Even if they act like they're perfectly fine, it's there's a newness to it that just
even though they're maybe in a different environment, their day looks the same. They go to bed at the same time, they do homework at the same time, they have all the same same setup. They're not kind of needing to change the pattern and rupture their routine each time they alternate. Especially, I know with custody, there are all sorts of different arrangements. Sometimes it's specific days of the week. And so one day you're your mom's, next day you're at your dad's, and your routine is just completely shifting both times. Whereas if everything stays cohesive, then it just feels like you're sleeping in a different bed, but your day actually looks the same. Yeah. I think we had a really, kind of somber conversation because of course no one necessarily wants to be in this transition, but hopefully we gave people some tidbits to make the transition less somber and less difficult.
And you know what, I honestly would say most people, if they're at the point where they're looking to get divorced, by the time they go through the transition, like 90% of them are way happier in the end. The women have massive glow ups, like 9 times out of 10. They're looking after themselves more. They're more enriched in life. They're doing different things, getting new hobbies, And the men have often a chance to connect with their children in a different way, to run the show a little bit more. Like there is some empowerment that comes once you get through that first year.
Yeah. Well, some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you so much for coming. This was really great.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.